Where we're starting at today, the hide had been scraped multiple times and washed. We washed it with soap, rinsed it out so where it didn't smell like moose at all anymore. It didn't smell like blood. And then I took one moose brain and warm water, and I rinsed the moose brain to try and get the blood out of it and pulled off blood veins that are attached to the brain, because we just spent all that time getting blood out of the hide, so you don't want to put more blood into the hide again. And then took a salad emulsifier for emulsifying vinaigrettes type thing, or just a hand wand mixer, and emulsified the brains in warm water and pureed it. And then used about maybe 3 gallons of water to soak the hide in, maybe 4.
So the brains conversation is something that, again, it's not an exact science. So it's about a pint jar, like a canning jar, is how much an adult moose brain fills up, which is about 1 pound of brains per moose hide. I tend to take about 3 quarts of water or 2 quarts of warm water and emulsify the brains, and then add that to add it to more water for a total volume of like 4 gallons. It just needs to be enough water to cover the hide.
If you put too much water in, then your solution is not concentrated enough, and it takes either more time or it's not gonna penetrate as well. So it's too diluted. So you want to get just enough to cover it. And if you have parts of the hide that are sticking out of the water, then those are going to get dry and crunchy, and that's not good. So we also put rocks over, or bricks over the hide in the brain water solution to keep it submerged. And then while it's submerged, I would occasionally pick up the hide and move it around to try and make all the different parts and sides have exposure to that brain water solution.
You can see when the hide is in the brain water that it starts to absorb the brain matter and the solution becomes more translucent. And even if it may appear like, oh, it just settled out, it's actually the brains are emulsified and they're in suspension. So when the solution gets clearer, it means that the hide is absorbing that brain matter.
And then right now it's October, so it's starting to become winter, and I kept it by the garage door so that the cold air would be going up against the trash can, so the water is cold. It's in the 30s, so it's like having it in a refrigerator, and that just keeps the hide from rotting.
The brain solution it's kind of a one-time use. So you're not going to necessarily freeze those 3 gallons of brain water and then use it again. The reason to save it would be, though, if you need to rebrain your hide, that solution you could use. So what I should have done is saved like maybe 1 gallon of that solution, put it in a cool place, because it's okay if it still ferments. And then if we needed to rebrain part of the hide, I would have just gotten some moss or a towel and saturated that one part of the hide with that brain solution. And it would have had enough brain still strong enough in it to do that work. And I should have saved that for that reason.
And generally speaking, 1 brain is enough to tan the moose that it came from. So you want to match the brains with the hide that you harvested. So if you have a really tiny brain, you're doing a gigantic moose, it's not going to work as well.
You're not always going to get brains right when you're ready to have your moose hide go into the moose brain solution. So you're going to have to store the brains. So the way that I usually do it is I saw the head in half or expose the head cavity. It's like a skull cap that pops off between the ears where the antlers kind of grow out. And I'll scoop it out, and then I'll rinse them off because there's blood that it's feeding the brain. So you want to rinse the blood off, and then I'll put it in a jar and throw it in the freezer, or put it in a yogurt container and put it in the freezer. Another way that you can do it is you can get it like a window screen, and you can mash it out on it to where it dries, and then you've made brain flakes, and then you can reconstitute them. I tend to not like that because that's a lot of extra work.
The other thing too that is worth noting is that fermented brains or aged brains is actually the best way to do what we're doing, because the fermentation process changes the chemicals in the brain and attacks the compounds between the protein fibers in the skin and breaks those down, which is the big difference between brain tanning and commercial tanning, is that the brains are actually removing a part that the chemical like chrome tanning doesn't do. So the fermentation process, one, you can just leave it in a jar and let it rot, and then I will put it in the freezer. Or what I'll do sometimes is I'll take it out of the freezer and then have it emulsify and let it age that way. And so that it's fermenting in the water process. And it's a smell thing for me, the way that I've gotten used to working with it.
So for fermenting the brains, it could take a day, it could take 3 days.
I do recommend a glass or a glass jar because you can see what's happening. If the brain starts to get moldy and there's green mold, that's not good. It should look like it's souring. And that's the way that Helen describes it, like it's soured. So if it smells sour, like sour cream compared to milk, or yogurt compared to milk, it has a different smell. It shouldn't be so strong like blue cheese. It's kind of a gradient scale on the dairy spectrum, is the way that I would look at it. And then also just visually looking at it through glass, you can watch. If it's on the counter, you may only need a day. If it's in the fridge, you may need like 7 days. If it's in the freezer, it's not going to ferment. It should still smell good, like fermented seal flipper or fermented fish heads. Like there's a fermentation smell that is a good one, and then there's things that smell like if you put garbage in a plastic bag and let it sit for a long time, that smells bad.
There's like the rule of thumb that every animal has enough brains in its head to tan its own hide. So a moose brain is big enough to tan a moose hide. A caribou brain is big enough to tan a caribou. A deer is big enough to do a deer hide. So if you don't have moose brains, which is a very common problem for people who are trying to tan hides, you can get them from a local butcher shop for pigs. If someone tries to give you cow brain, just say no, and don't ask for cow brain because of mad cow. So it's the safety warning with it's a safety warning with brain matter are prion diseases, which they attack your nervous system, and they can jump from animal brain to you as a human being. So there's diseases that are nervous system diseases that you can catch, like mad cow, from cow brains. So no one should be giving you or selling you cow brains. But pig brains are okay, and it might take about 2 pig brains to make 1 moose brain. And if you want to beef up your brain concentration, you could go maybe 2 pounds of pig brains for 1 hide, and it might make it a little softer or a little easier. It's not going to make it, it's still going to have to be worked really hard.
We have removed the rocks from the hide. We've checked it, and it's stretchy, so that's good. And it doesn't smell really strong. It smells correct. And now I'm going to set up a sheet of plywood outside and a board attached to the back of my hitch on my truck to then be able to do that corkscrew action to wring out the hide. And that's what I did before, like in between the DWC and going into here, is I did that because I really need to get that blood out before. So I ran the rope through about 8 holes on this side, and then I cinched it up to where it all comes together as a bunch, and then I just tied it around this piece of wood here and tied it to the rope that was attached to the hitch. We're going the opposite direction that I just twisted by myself. So I'm just holding up the hide so it's an easier height to work on. So they're twisting while I'm just holding the weight of the hide. So you can see there's still water coming out, but it's a lot less than the first ring. It's not just gushing out now, it still is flowing, but it's dripping, and it's not the volume that was the first ring. And then when I pull my body weight, more water should come out. And then subsequent twists will result in more water being extracted. So we've twisted it to the right, and then we twisted it to the left. And now we've taken it out and kind of flattened it to check to see if there's spots that need to be twisted a little bit more, which there are a couple. So we'll guide it this time as it's wrapping to make sure those spots are more encapsulated. And then we'll twist it one more to the right, one more to the left, and then call it good. So before they were on the outside, and now we need to try and make sure they get on the inside. And that should help get more pressure on that middle spine section of the hide. And then we have our rope, and we want to make sure that we get the rope more times coiled towards the middle. It just has to get wrapped in the same direction you're turning, because if you're not, it just untwists. So what we'll do this time is we're just gonna do that.
Nice.
I'm gonna tie it just for safety's sake, so it doesn't slip off. So we've wrung it out 4 times, twice one direction, twice the other direction, and now we're just stretching it to see what it looks like, and then we'll build the frame and then lace it up. So part of stretching this out like this, what we're doing right now, is that when we go to build the frame, we're not having to pull the rope so much, and it saves a lot of lacing time. So we've gained maybe a foot already just hand stretching. As we are scraping it and it's drying out, it's going to want to shrink back down to this smaller size.
Right.
And that's why it's helpful to have it laced out,
And have
is
that
the laces keep it from shrinking